Hello and welcome back to another Stormwater School session here live from the Banbury HQ at Graph UK. And we're once again joined by Lisa. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Callum. How are you?
Very, very good. Thank you. How was your weekend?
Really good. Yes. Looking forward to the next one already, though.
As always.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tottenham have not been performing very well. So when it comes to weekends, they're typically ruined for the past couple of weekends.
Oh well, it's I think you should be used to it by now, Callum. Surely, a bit mixed recently, hasn't it?
It has been, but I've been living in the fancy world of Football Manager where my Tottenham team has won its second Premier League title in 2 seasons. So I keep gloating about that and people just keep giving me weird looks.
You get far
Um,
too much time on your hands. I think.
I know 5 titles in 6 seasons. That's such a massive achievement. How's the weather up there? Because it's snowing a bit down in Banbury, but as one fake Scottish person in the office said, it's nothing compared to what's up north. So how's it like up there?
It's freezing. I mean, it's not snowing to be fair, but it's like -5, -6 last night. We had quite a few burst water mains. We had no water at home last night, which is back now this morning. But there's been lots and lots of burst pipes and issues caused by the cold weather. So we're about -6, I think, at the minute outside, but pretty cold. But no snow at least, so that's good.
Well, yeah. The fake Scottish person that currently sits downstairs in Banbury was going on about how wispy the snow is compared to the north. But
I mean, when it snows here, it does really snow, but we don't have any at the minute. So you guys are struggling with snow. I hate the snow, so I'm glad.
do you hate the snow?
I hate the snow. Yeah, hate it.
I like it. I love a walk in the snow. I love when it's really heavy snow, and I love a walk in it.
Not for me. Like the sunshine.
All right. But I'm still quite a child, so when it comes to snow, I just instantly want to throw snowballs. And I did that this morning. I was throwing one at my girlfriend, and I wanted to throw it at her car window, but I missed, and it went in her car, so her seat was just covered.
So you like throwing snowballs at your girlfriend and you play a lot of Football Manager. I don't think you'll have a girlfriend much longer, Callum, if you keep this up. You need to change your ways.
Treat you mean to keep them keen, as the old saying goes. But anyway, enough of the chit-chat and digressing. We're here to talk about all things stormwater with our stormwater expert, Lisa. And the main topic of today's presentation is something that we found was actually Googled quite regularly, and that is whether an attenuation tank can itself cause flooding. Okay. So Lisa, take it away as our expert.
I mean, theoretically, an attenuation tank can become overly full. Obviously, as I think we've mentioned in previous sessions, they're designed with an allowance for climate change and for a 1 in 50-year storm event or a 1 in 100-year storm event, which basically means one of these big freak storms, which only happens once in a while. But if you've designed your tank for a 1 in 100-year storm event and you happen to be living through the middle of a 1 in 200-year storm event, for example, theoretically that tank could, be not big enough for purpose and back up and cause surface water flooding. However, this is extremely rare. This really would be a freak event, as I said. Well-designed tanks with the proper allowances should really mitigate that risk majority of the time. But occasionally you can have tanks which have not been designed properly or not installed as per the design, which shouldn't really happen. But we have heard of instances where tanks haven't been installed as per the drainage design and things. In which case, they could become overly full, and back up the pipes and cause surface water flooding. I mean, it would still reduce the risk of the surface water flooding compared to if no tank was there at all. There is that still buffer. But theoretically, yes. However, it should be an incredibly rare occurrence if it happens, essentially.
Cool. So realistically, it just comes down to as long as the system's designed properly, because if the system was designed not big enough, it means that during those 1 in 100-year events, it could then cause flooding.
It could, yes. I said, or if you got a bigger event than it was designed for, but those should be incredibly rare. But yeah, it was designed properly, looking at the correct rainfall data for the area, and the correct, catchment area and things like that, and with the proper climate change allowances. It really shouldn't it shouldn't happen, to be honest. But never say never. Anything is possible, because who can really predict the future climate change? There's a lot of modelling being done, which I know we're going to talk about in our next session. But just with the base, the modelling and estimates at the minute, it shouldn't happen.
And I guess like if there's blockages in the pipework too, that could potentially stop water from entering the attenuation tank or blocking the attenuation outlet of it, which could therefore cause flooding as well if that
it could, if the tank isn't properly maintained, the suds, like silt traps aren't regularly emptied, tanks aren't properly flushed through and things like that. Again, theoretically yes, but with a proper maintenance, it should happen. It's very important though that after a large storm event that things like silt traps and gullies are cleared, and channel drains, because these are the areas that block, and after large storms is when they're most likely to become blocked. So it's very important that proper maintenance is carried out. But yes, again, theoretically, the pipe work could become blocked and cause surface water flooding as well.
Perfect. I think you touched on it there. Like, it could not be. It may just be due to a freak Mother Nature event. I mean, if you have a system that's a 1 in 100 storm event, which is not very regular in terms of the actual event, but actual size and tanks, 1 in 100 year events is very common.
Yes.
And if you have like a 1 in 200 or 250 year event,
exactly,
it's just nature taking its course.
Yes, exactly. But again, that should be an incredibly rare event. Also, 1 every 250 years. Hopefully, most of us would never see it in a lifetime. And even so, the fact that the tank was there to mitigate a large portion of that, would certainly still reduce the flood, the surface water flooding there would be if there was no tank whatsoever.
Yeah. So I think it was America last year where they had 2 1 in 1,000 year storm events in a week. And that was the first time it ever happened on record. Like, human records didn't exist to have the data to know if that happened before, but we can't predict or put stuff in place in order to safeguard against those.
No, unfortunately, Mother Nature is, is its own entity essentially, and obviously humans have had significant impact on Mother Nature and flood risk and flood mitigation. But every so often, there are just going to be these freak events, these massive storms, which are nothing to do with mankind. Essentially, they are what they are, and who can predict? We can't predict those. We can't model for them because they are essentially freak events. But they shouldn't. They should happen incredibly rarely. Hopefully.
Yes, certainly so.
Not a week anyway. No, we don't want that to happen.
No, and I doubt we'll see these storm events that happen in the US anyway, because they tend to be massive hurricanes and that are mainly caused from stuff come from or usually pass through the Gulf of Mexico, through the Atlantic, and obviously, you don't quite get that in the British Channel or the North Sea.
Yeah.
So that answers today's main topic. We hope that we answered that as clearly as possible. We had the we answered your question with that one. Now it's time for my favorite topic for our live sessions, and that is in the news. And we've got one news story here today regarding stormwater flooding. And as I kind of said in previous ones, I will try my best to stop having dreary news stories. However, when it comes to water, flooding, and drainage, they're quite hard to come by. Anyway, so this was a report that was published yesterday or the day before, saying global warming could raise UK flood damage bill by 20%. I believe there was recent climate change talks. I think it was COP27, I want to say, and kind of off the back of that, investigation was done into the UK, and because they think that UK flooding could rise by 20% in the near future, it could cause obviously a knock-on effect of 20% extra of the cost of flood damage. I think at the moment it costs the Britain £700 million in terms of flood damage every year.
Yeah, that was an estimate by the Association of British Insurers, I believe. You know, as an average, which is obviously an incredible amount of money. You know, that's potentially an incredible amount of damage and psychological damage, and you know, damage to people's homes, their memories, their lives. You know, it's an incredible amount of. It's not just obviously money; it's real people's homes, real people's you know, everyday living situations of businesses essentially, which are being affected like this by flood. And obviously any modelling that these scientists can do and any predictions they can make to help decide where to better spend money to prevent flooding is only going to be a benefit to those, you know, to those living in high risk areas. So because the areas, according to this article, which was very interesting, the areas where flooding is at high risk will potentially change due to global warming. You know, some areas will be much more highly affected than they are now. Areas who potentially don't think that they're at risk of flood at the moment could become at risk of flood. And so this future modelling and prediction is really important so that we can try and prevent damage, or the government can try and prevent damage before it occurs, essentially.
Yeah, because I think there's 2 points that you mentioned. The kind of the emotional damage that flooding can cause, because not only is it causing damage to people's homes, the foundations of their literal house, but people's belongings that could get damaged by the water and the flooding that have huge sentimental value to those people is quite, I mean, it's monumental. And for those to be lost in the floods is something you can't put a monetary value on.
And just also that people will potentially be out of your property for goodness knows how long until, you know, until repairs are made, and the disruption to your business and you know, loss of it. It's just a real risk for everyone. I mean, properly designed SUD systems should help, you know, mitigate some of these risks on new builds and things like that. I mean, obviously, you know, new builds are primarily where our attenuation tanks go. And, you know, it should be designed to help minimise these risks. But the risks really are greater as well for these more well-established infrastructure, older properties and older, you know, villages. And obviously that's not necessarily always the case. The location, if it's in a floodplain, whether it be new or old, will potentially be affected if there's severe global warming beyond the levels of where the tanks have been designed for and the drainage design has been designed for. But, you know, those people living in areas, you know, which didn't have the same SUD provisions as now, you know, it needs to be retrofitted. You know, the government needs to spend this money essentially, you know, putting in retrospective flood prevention measures. And, you know, so having these models, as I said earlier, to work out where those high risk areas are, you know, is a benefit to everyone.
I think the University of Bristol that have done this report have done some of the modelling, and there's a graphic further up this news article. We'll just get it on screen in a second. I think it was close to the top. We've got some frantic scrolling. This one kind of shows kind of the darker red spots are the kind of main areas where flooding could occur, and there's a lot of major cities within the UK that it could actually affect.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, obviously, you know, the southeast, you know, London, you know, this kind of area is very much in that red, you know, Cardiff, South Wales, you know, and certainly the, you know, the majors like Glasgow and Edinburgh, there across the central belt of Scotland, you know, are incredibly at risk. It seems, according to these models, you know, of increased flood damage in the future. And incredibly much more rainfall than has been previously seen in these areas. So the damage that it could cause to these kind of built up areas is yeah, it could be incredibly costly, let's just say.
Yeah, because it makes sense. Oh, I say it makes sense. You know, in ye olden times, when it comes to building up these major cities that are all over the UK, they tend to be around big river channels because that's where the main source of goods could come from.
Yeah, that's it. They were around docks, boats. You know, that was how goods were moved around the UK. You know, most of the major cities in the UK certainly are the biggest ones are coast or very close to the coast. You know, or have very good access to you know, have major rivers and things like that. So it does leave them certainly at more risk than areas more inland.
Well, Yeah, so quite the dreary news story. Once again, I will try to get some more upbeat ones. But I did see there was actually a part of the modelling, they were looking at actual football stadiums that could be lost, a part of the flooding. And I believe 4 Premier League teams could lose their stadiums. I think it was, I know 3 were definite, were Fulham, Chelsea, and West Ham, obviously right by the river. As a Tottenham fan, if Chelsea and West Ham lost their stadiums, I don't think I'd be too disheartened. Anyway, but we're moving on.
Moving on.
Yes. And it's time to answer some questions that have come in. I think we've had them written down. So ask them to Lisa. I think they come in the comment section. But the first one, Lisa, is why is there a vent pipe on an attenuation tank?
Pretty simple, really. That obviously these tanks should sit empty majority of the time, or at least not completely full. And so the air which is in the tank, if the tank does fill up or there's a storm event, even if it's not filling up the entire tank, any air which is contained within the structure needs to escape. So we put a vent pipe up to the surface. Usually the customer will run a vent pipe from the top of the tank to the surface, usually in a safe area, like under a landscape or with a grated cover, so that when water enters the tank, air has somewhere to escape to. And that is as simple as that, essentially. So as not to compromise the tank welding or anything like that, or with the cover. So when water comes in, air needs to leave, and so the vent pipe allows it to do that.
Perfect. That answers that one. And then the next question we had was, can you put a soak away in clay soil?
It's really not recommended. No, I mean, I'd say probably the basic answer is no, though never say never. If you had a big enough soak away on incredibly poor soil, then I suppose theoretically you could. But, before any soak away is always a preferable option for designers. Essentially it's always looked at first, and there will be a percolation test done on the soil to see whether it's practical. But obviously if you have to have a massive attenuation tank to soak away a small amount of water, then it's really not a practical solution, because the soil is just not permeable enough and take too long to drain. And so an attenuation tank becomes the best solution to essentially carry the water down and dispose of it through other water courses or through the storm sewer system. But it's really not. Clay soil is the worst kind of soil for a soak away, essentially. So I would say no.
Perfect. That answers that one. And I believe the final question we had for you today was, how do you build an attenuation tank?
I mean, it's really there's a few components. So obviously the first component is to put down a layer of geotextile, which protects the first thing you do is when you soil should be excavated in a nice level flat base of gravel, so the tank and crates sit nicely on the surface. You would start with a layer of geotextile, usually a 300-gram geotextile, which would protect the tank with from any potential, sharp stones or anything like that in the soil when it's backfilled. Then you would put down your layer of impermeable geomembrane on the base, which is the kind of black, plasticky stuff, which essentially makes the tank a tank. And then that is when you start adding the crates. So the crates would be installed in the format of the design, which as specified, or as we had approved from our contractor. So once the crates were in the required shape, essentially it's almost like wrapping a big present. The black plastic is brought up the sides, and a lid piece is put on, and then that is welded shut to create a sealed tank system. Obviously, before that final seal, would add things like pipe connections in, so that water can enter in and go out of the tank. So there is kind of black pipe stubs put on, so that we can so that the tank can be joined to external pipe work. And then once it's all been sealed up, once the black membrane has been sealed, usually using something called a wedge welder, which creates a nice double seam, tight double seam on the top of the tank. Then we put a final layer of over the top and drape down the sides of that geotextile material, again to protect the top and sides also from shark stones and things like that. And then it's backfilled essentially, so it's a very simple process, but hard to explain. One of those things you probably need to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do have videos on our YouTube and on our website of how been them installed. The one that is done quite well, I will say so myself because I did it, is the Whitchurch installation that shows it from start to finish. And I found out the other day it had 87,000 views.
Wow. Goodness.
Which I found quite incredible. I mean, it was all shot, all recorded on an iPhone and edited by myself. So the call up from Hollywood will be immediate. Anyway, that is it for today's Stormwater session. Thank you, Lisa, for your time today.
No problem. Thank you very much, Callum. Again, hope you have a lovely day, and to our viewers as well.
Yes, thank you for taking time out of the day to come watch us. We hope you found it useful, and make sure you come back next week for a rainwater research session with Mr. David Stagg. So in the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you later.